May I now have the pleasure of inviting our next dignitary also. Mr. Pravin Anand would be joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome him warmly. He's a managing partner, Anand & Anand. A beautiful career spanning almost 4 decades. He's a leading figure. All right. Off to these wonderful gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Start by telling you about my relationship with Mr. Bhasin. I was a young lawyer, having joined practice in 1979, and I was invited in 1982 to the Hofburg Imperial Palace in Vienna to speak at the IBA conference, the International Bar Association. Very prestigious for a young lawyer with 3 years practice. And it was all due to Mr. Bhasin that I was invited. And I went and I spoke, and when I went there, Mr. Bhasin called me and said, "Have you paid a registration fee?" I said, "Yes, I have." So he says, "You know, I'll get you a refund of your fee, and as a young person here, you can spend that money and buy some things." And he got me a refund of the registration fee. And that was a lot of pocket money, because those days you weren't allowed to carry much. We had that limitation of $500 US and all that. So I remembered him with that warmth in my heart. And as the years went by, Mr. Bhasin got married to my dearest friend, who was in my class in law college, Nina. And so Mr. Bhasin got tied to us in 2 ways. As a very dear friend of my father, Mr. Bhasin, and Nina as a very dear friend of mine. So 2 generations. And over the years, the kind of contribution that Mr. Bhasin has made in his 60 years at the bar, I don't believe any other individual lawyer in the country has. Particularly for the legal profession, legal professionals. And I think in that sense, he really deserves a big hand. Last year, I got one of the organizations, I don't remember which one, I think it was Asia Law, I forget the name. But they gave me the award of Managing Partner of the Year. And so the first question I asked was, why me? I mean, I don't manage at all. I don't control the firm at all. Yes, I have been a managing partner for the last 43 years. I do have that experience. But all I do is I select well, I manage egos, and I allow people to grow. And I think as a result of that, a lot of people have actually grown. They've developed, they've left the firm, they've done exceedingly well. Maybe more than 150 firms have come out of Anand & Anand. And I feel very happy about that, because it's created an infrastructure of intellectual property. So wherever we go, whichever city we go, we do find people who build with the firm in some way or the other. And I think that's very important, because when I spoke to Lakshmi, I thought Lakshmi was coming, so I spoke to him. I said, "Lakshmi, this is not a topic that I've ever spoken on. Can you guide me? What are you going to speak on?" So Lakshmi laughed. And he said, "Managing a law firm is the toughest thing that I've done." And that's so true at times. And Mr. Bhasin has spoken about 2 or 3 things which are big points. One, the status of India will determine the status of the legal profession, and in turn the status of the law firm. Point 1. Point 2, environmental issues are going to become big. Point 3, the lesser laws, more justice. Point 4, greater role of women. Those are the 4 that I collect from what you spoke. One thing I'd like to say is that India and its status, it is believed India may not be doing so well in 2030, the profession may not be doing so well. But the way I want to talk about intellectual property, we have seen massive changes in the last 5 years or 10 years. The changes really started from 2012 when the Code of Civil Procedure was amended, and then came 2015 when the Commercial Courts Act came in, and the National Innovation Policy was formed by the government. And after that, there was so much of an acceleration. The IPAB was abolished, the Intellectual Property Division was formed, new rules came out at various levels. There was a general rule, there was an IT rule, there was a virtual conferences rule, there was the rules governing patents, and all those collectively have accelerated the growth of intellectual property to a point when you go to the 3 judges who sit on the original, on the Intellectual Property Division in the High Court every day, you will be shocked to see. It's like a mela. It's the number of cases, the diversity of cases. It just shows you so much of energy and such a variety of law firms and lawyers. Younger lawyers arguing intermediary liability issues, disparagement issues, all sorts of very complex trademark and other issues are all being argued. And I think that is going to advance even more in 2030. So I am very optimistic about good changes ahead of us. I just wanted to make that one point. So much so that we find that India is coming out to be, particularly in certain areas like patents in, let's say, the telecom industry, standard essential patent field. It's coming out to be a destination in the top 5 countries in the world as a destination to sue infringers. A couple of years ago, we felt that we had a very bad patent law or a very bad patent system. But today, UK, Germany, India, China are the 4 countries that the big innovators are looking at to file lawsuits. And they try to file these lawsuits together to put maximum pressure on the defendants who may be infringing in multiple jurisdictions. Now, if that process continues at the speed at which it is continuing, then there will be lots of good changes ahead of us. Of course, I would like to also say that I haven't yet started my slides. I'm sorry about that. I might take a few minutes more. But everything that I say today is subject to black swan events in the future. When we spoke about the pandemic, I thought it's a black swan event. But when I read a little further, Nassim Taleb calls it a white swan. He says, no, it was predicted that it would happen. There will be events coming which we would not be able to predict, and nobody is foreseeing, like a meteoroid hitting the earth. These are all possibilities. And so, all those make it impossible to make predictions for 2030. But subject to all of that, what has been happening so far, if projected, leads to what I'm going to try and summarize in a few minutes. So, let me start with the slides. The legal market today has been valued, according to some studies, reliable studies, at $713 billion US, and is likely to roughly double, or 1,145 billion by 2030. So it's going to be a very large market. The cross-border advisory services will grow. Now, what does that mean? Which means that international, multinational corporations dealing with maybe baby diapers or cigarettes or health foods, nutritional foods, might ask multiple law firms in the maybe 5 countries, 10 countries, 20 countries on what are their local laws, guidelines, warnings, health hazards, etc. And the law firms will have to report to one nodal firm who will coordinate on behalf of everybody. So the multinational who's interested in answers will go to one law firm, one nodal firm, and they will farm out the work in 20-30 countries, collect the results and try and tabulate them and give them to the client. That kind of cross-border advisory services have been projected will increase greatly. Then multiple law firms will be coordinating with each other. And I gave the example of standard essential patents as something of which I have direct knowledge. Litigation in 5 countries and 4 or 5 law firms coordinating, maybe meeting once a week or twice a week, sometimes once in 2 weeks. All the law firms together discussing strategy, and the multiple disciplines, meaning you have lawyers looking after the legal side, you have engineers looking after, let's say, the technology in question, because you are talking, let's say, patents. You have to prove that the patents are according to an international standard. It is an essential patent. It has been violated, so you have to prove infringement. They're all technical issues, so you involve technical people. And then you have FRAND issues, fair, reasonable and non-discriminatory, financial arguments, where you have valuation experts and people who will try and project what would be a fair royalty to charge had a license been given. And so you have all these people coordinating in a team. And so when it goes to trial, the case will involve technical experts and legal experts. Legal experts, of course, will do the arguing, but not the evidence. The technical, unless foreign law is involved. And of course, you have financial experts leading evidence on what should be the right model to charge the royalty. So this is where multiple law firms across multiple disciplines. Then, I must say, it is not easy to get multiple disciplines together. And I give the example of how, when we wanted to recruit engineers for our firm, at that time, you would talk to engineers and say, why don't you enter the intellectual property patent world? And they'd turn around and say, we'd rather get jobs in America and go away, and why patents? Patents have nothing to do with us. And it took a long time. So I started with a seminar. IBM had a kind of an incubation cell at the IIT Delhi, and they called me to speak, and I told them that engineers needed to join the profession. It took 8 years to convince engineers to join. And after that, when the engineers did join the firm, after that there was so much of the cultural differences between the technical people and the legal people. The technical people would turn up in t-shirts, they'd be having balis in their kan and in their ears, they'd use 4-letter words, in every sentence. You couldn't push them, you couldn't discipline them. Their approach was completely different. And then we had to get used to that. And so the lawyers, there were ego issues between them and the lawyers, and after a while that settled down and they started to coordinate. Today I see fantastic synergies coming out. When it worked beautifully well, and I can only see this process being accelerated further till 2030. You'll have more and more different people of different cultures, different backgrounds, different disciplines, coordinating extremely well with each other. Now, let me come back. Traditional law firm model of having people who are working with you 10 to 5 every day or 10 to 8 every day, that will change to a Hollywood style model, which means in Hollywood what happens? You have a project, you get external, you get photographers, you get cameramen, you get people who are into music, you put the team together. Similarly, you will put together the team for a project. And it will not depend, it will be such a flexible model. You may be working with external experts, including persons from other law firms. So we see a lot of that happening now when two law firms are working together on a complex, because the client's been consulting one law firm for protection, one law firm for litigation. You have both the law firms working together. They are otherwise competitors, but on that project, they are working together in great coordination with each other. And that has been called in the industry as a Hollywood style model, and that will only grow. Then, from a technology assisted law firm, it will become a technology led law firm, which means technology will come first. Less manpower, greater automation, and a lot of the repetitive kind of work that we do, and you know about that, docketing, research, paralegal work, receptionist kind of roles, all of those will be pushed to automation. And I was quite pleasantly surprised to see this robo at Bangalore airport called Sky. This picture has been taken by me. So it's a picture where I asked Sky for directions, and we got good directions to where to find a particular resource. Now, the fear of artificial intelligence will disappear, which means lawyers will use more and more artificial intelligence and other technologies to design systems. The lawyers will design systems. For example, clients these days want to know how much will it cost, how much time will it take. Two questions that come up, almost the first two questions, even before you start to address the merits of a case. And if you can accurately answer them, and it turns out that at the end of the day, it turns out to be a good answer, then clients want you. And to estimate cost, different software can be used, can be developed, time estimation, various stages of proceedings, what are the various options, all those can be estimated quite well using programs which can be developed by lawyers. We, for example, have developed a confusion model for trademarks. Rather than when you go to a judge and he has two products before him, and one judge will say, yes, they are similar, another judge will say, no, I don't think they're similar. That's a very instinctive, kind of subjective way of coming to a decision. But if you can have data-based decision making, which means if you feed in data in a model which can predict a mathematical output for likelihood of confusion, then that would give the judge a kind of a blood report for a doctor. When he starts off with a blood report and then does his analysis, the judge would then be doing analysis after he has that kind of an objective report with facts which he can then rely upon in an objective way. And lawyers will be doing that kind of developmental work. The more lawyers get into predictive analysis will set apart those from other law firms. And this is very important because there have been cases in America where they say that if a lawyer is not using predictive analysis, then he is negligent. There have been cases which have said that. Which means lawyers will look at the profile of parties, the record of the judge. Is he injunction granting? Is he not injunction granting? The court trends, the way they've been going, and try and predict out. And so you'll become more like a Daniel Kahneman in predictive behavioral economics, where we're getting a lot into data and predictions. Then Yes. The future areas which are predicted as having tremendous growth will be, a lot will move from software to data, and a lot will move from the traditional IT, what is known as ICT, to digital. And that means things like the Industrial Revolution 4.0, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, non-fungible tokens, AI, Internet of Things. They are different from software, IT, ICT. And how are they different? It's a difference of focus. They may be built on a layer of software, but they are a combination of software, hardware, data, and a lot more. And the focus has shifted from human design to machine design, to machine learning. So instead of a human writing an algorithm or a program, you collect a lot of data, and then you see patterns which the human eye will never be able to see in that data, and those patterns will write the algorithm. And that algorithm, a machine learned model, will then predict what would happen in other cases. And this one big change that WIPO has demonstrated with an infographic, namely this one. If you see on the left side, the years in which certain technologies grew has been shown. So 1895 to 1925, engine and transport, automobiles, etc., then biotechnology, pharmaceutical sciences, then ICT, and then from ICT now digital technologies. And the right side tells you what those digital technologies are. Cloud computing, IoT, autonomous systems, drones, autonomous cars, big data, artificial intelligence, all those collectively. And I think that change of focus has been demonstrated by a 172% increase in the number of patent filing in that latter area. So that, we as a law firm have a lot of copyright software cases on behalf of Business Software Alliance, Microsoft, Adobe, Autodesk, Bentley Systems, Siemens, etc. That is changing because now we have IoT companies whose approach is completely different. And so it's very important to see that trend. What type of lawyers will we have? We'll have lawyers they'll have to understand that intellectual property will be at the core of every transaction. And you will have to therefore have specialization. The key word is specialization. And how specialist can specialization get? Let me show that by this infographic. Suppose you have IP lawyers. If you have patents, within patents, in our group, in our firm, we've got pharmaceutical practice areas and we've got ICT or the telecom area. In that ICT, we've got software, the traditional, and the standard essential patent, 3G, 4G, 5G kind of newer developments. And in that, you can have implementer side or you can have innovator side. So implementers are people who put together telephones, take licenses of technologies from others, like the Chinese companies, a lot of them. And innovate, like Samsung, for example, Samsung, Apple. Innovators are companies like Nokia or InterDigital or sometimes Huawei who develop technologies. And even in trademarks, you see this difference. You have on the protection side and litigation side. Then you have you have valuation experts, and you have defamation, disparagement kind of lawyers, and they're turning out to be specialists. More and more specialization is coming in. And so one person who's doing, let's say, pharma work is not doing ICT. And a person who's doing, let's say, in copyright, book piracy, is not touching music and films. The people who are doing royalty licensing are only licensing experts. That kind of specialization has come in. Then, budgets. Every client is expecting a pre-approved budget, and 81% of corporate America has demonstrated that in 2018. And there's a move to have these e-billing portals like Anaqua, Serengeti, Timetrics, 360, Counseling. And you have to have experts within your firm who manage these. It's impossible. They're so difficult for a lawyer to understand. It's quite a challenge. And the foreign company will not work with a law firm who does not have an expertise of these e-billing portals. And how companies will have to cut cost. The bigger giants will have to cut cost. Either law firms, clients will go to smaller and cheaper law firms, or if they have to go to a big law firm, the big law firm has to cut cost, which means either you quote lump sum fees, or you have capped amount, or there are flexible billing systems like blended rates, or you give discounts for repetitive stuff. Or a lot of the work will be moved to in-house by large corporates, to their in-house people. Then there's a lot of competition from alternate legal service providers. This term has now come to stay in the literature, the ALSPs. ALSPs are the big accounting firms who are getting more and more into the legal side. So as a countermeasure, that's the size of their market, 10.7 billion in 2017. As a countermeasure, law firms are getting into their work. So law firms have started to do domain name services or setting up subsidiaries to allow clients to buy technology, or developing software for managing regulatory provisions. So this is the way that law firms are countering the impact of the big giants. Then swarm intelligence, and this is particularly important for you to understand. So rather than working in silos, it's important that the various members of a big law firm work together in unison. And the one example that is given is of Boston Marathon bombing, where the mission was to save lives, and how hundreds of people cooperated to do that. But I would like to cut short by giving you the example of a very recent film that has come on Netflix. It's called it relates to the rescue of the wild soccer team who had got 12 people with a coach who had got trapped in the cave. It's the Tham Luang Cave, where Navy SEALs and engineers and doctors and divers all coordinated to save the 12 children and the coach after they'd been in the cave for 18 days without food and water. Out of which I think 10 days were without food and water, then some food and water had been provided to them. But the way they coordinated, you have to see that in that film which has come on Netflix just a few days ago. And that's the kind of coordination that law firms will have to get involved with. And then finally, the biggest challenges of all is the human factor. Managing egos, very important in a law firm. It could break up the law firm. Because as people get more and more specialist and they become centers of power and learning, they think that the sun shines on their backside. And I mean, and therefore, that is a big challenge. And not confronting issues, but resolving. One change that we've seen, and you can compare the Indian Parliament with the European Parliament. How so many laws are passed. They don't debate everything, or they agree. Even if they are on opposite groups, they agree. And they move things forward. It's not a boycott or a stalemate in case of disagreement. And I think that's something that law firms will have to learn in order to survive in 2030. And empowering professionals, very important. To more than money, what's going to really matter is how you teach them new things, how you build up new skills for them and help them build those. Yes, it happens that the more you empower people, the more attrition there will be. People will leave you and you will be unhappy about that. But in the long run, that's the successful model. Because people who stay will be happier and ultimately your attrition rates will come down, and that's the way to go about it. So you may have training programs on AI, training programs on quiz, on cryptocurrencies, on competition law, on insolvency, areas which your firm doesn't know much about, but you train your lawyers, they'll feel very happy. I remember the day when people get raises, they're not so happy, but the day when you teach them a new concept, you have people beaming and saying, I didn't know that. And that's the kind of real happiness that will come to them. And that's, I think, that's what I think the future will have to aim for. Thank you very much.